guests, or I checked my table. There are some stuff here left to clean the table first. And dear professors of Dhaka University or many other universities of Bangladesh, those pioneers and heroes of the July Revolution, which made us, when we sounded us very, very hopeful and inspiring events when we heard from Turkey. And I convey you, first of all, the greetings of your brothers from Turkey. They all say you, and I say you, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am really very happy to be here to address you and to be part of this celebration of the July Revolution after 1 year. And this, when we heard about this July Revolution, we were in the celebration of the 8th celebration of about the releasing or overcoming the coup attempts in Turkey. In Turkey, you know, we have a sort of chain of the coup d'etat attempts, or coup d'etat in general, the military rule and the despotic rule of some oligarchic groups who tried to blockade the popular will, or to blockade the democracy in Turkey. Since that is the fate of all Muslim countries, indeed, after colonialism. It is the post-colonial character of our societies or nations in general. Because, as you know, it is mine. Yeah. Okay. After, you know, I'm supposed to have a speech to make some comparison between Turkey and to share my experiences in Turkey, or in particular, or in about the Arab Spring, the Arab revolutions which took place in 2011. And which was a sort of chain of democratization and seek for democracy in the Arab world. The Arab world, the Arab people who are suffering from colonialism, from direct or indirect colonialism in their countries, which is reflected upon them as a sort of tyranny, as a sort of dictatorships. Which was which was humiliating their own people, which was humiliating their nation. And so in 2010, indeed, in 17 December 1, Abu Azizi in Tunisia, and he came and burned himself, protesting the dictatorship but not protesting dictatorship only, but he also protested the humiliation of one nation, of the people, by their own rulers. And the rulers of the Arab society, which started from Tunisia to Egypt to Libya and to Yemen, and afterwards to Syria. And in Syria, of course, when it arrived in Syria, and another counter-revolutions had started. And these counter-revolutions, of course, there was another wave. The last wave was Turkey. There was target of these revolutions, counter-revolutions. Counter-revolutions means, of course, against revolutions. They are not revolutions. Indeed, they are not revolutions by their very nature. They were attempts to murder the democracies, the revolutions. the will of the revolution from their own societies. And then when the last wave or the last target of this counter-revolution serial was Turkey. And they attempted in Turkey in the name of popular protest, for example, street protest, which is indeed a symbol of democracy. And its protests are always everywhere the symbol of democracy. People are walking to protest something, and that it is their very nature. By its very nature, it is their own right, very natural right of the people to protest something, to protest their ruler, to protest something. But they did it not against a tyranny, against a despot, against a dictator, but they did against an elected president or elected prime minister, elected government. When that was another track of coup d'etats, coup d'etat attempts, because when you try to say. To use the streets, to use the instruments of democracy in order to revolt against democracy. That is very interesting conspiracy, and that is what happened in Turkey, and that is what happened against the revolutions, especially in Egypt. When in Egypt the revolution took place, and Mohamed Morsi, the first one who has been chosen in the history of Egypt, in the place of the pharaohs. He was the first one who was elected, and you know how he was revolted. The uprising against him took place on the name of more democracy, not on the name of, for example, he was, for example, corrupted. No, he was elected just 1 year ago, even less than 1 year ago, and those the counter-revolutionaries motivated people, and even they encouraged and motivated people to work against democracy indeed. And they revolted the democracy by the instruments of democracy. Of course, this was an excuse, and this was a pretext. And by this pretext, the coup d'etat, the military, came behind the protest, the democratic protesters. Indeed, those protesters were motivated by the military organs, by the non-democratic actors, indeed. And so there came another coup d'etat, and now those who are walking, those who came together, somebody, unfortunately, I was in Egypt at that time, and I was witnessing directly what was happening. And I interviewed with somebody who joined these uprising movements, street movements. They were saying that, oh, Mohamed Morsi came to power, but he didn't share the power. I say, why he should have to share the power? He was chosen. He was elected. He was elected. He has a 5-year term. You should wait. If you are not content with what he is doing, you have the chance to change him by election, by ballot boxes. But they thought that they will ask for more democracy, more participation, etc. And they joined the coup d'etat, conspiratorial coup d'etat attempt. And now, of course, they are really very, very upset about what happened. Then after a very, very, very short while, they were excluded from the process of coup d'etat, also from the new constitution of the new government. And now Egypt is in a dark situation. And I told all this in order to give you some examples about, because after a revolution is very, very important, but to keep and to maintain the revolution, I would like to thank to Saidul Islam about his very good presentation. At the end, he showed us about how to protect how to keep on this revolutionary line is very, very important, because you should be very, very awake about the conspiracies of the non-democratic powers when they come together in order to make some conspiracies against democracy on the name of democracy. Sometimes they come on the name of democracy. And one of the most important elements which may encourage or which may motivate is Islamophobic ideas. Islamophobic ideas may say in Egypt, for example, the liberals came together with the coup d'etat, with the anti-democratic elements or groups, because they were not content with the Islamists. They were complaining about the Islamists. They didn't like Islamists. They had some Islamophobic ideas about the Islamists, and they come, and what they did, they killed democracy, and they killed all the possibilities of democracy in their own country. That is very important to mention here, of course. So Turkey has suffered too much from the coup d'etats, and it is very interesting to mention that Turkey during the July Revolution also is the same history of Turkish resistance against the coup d'etat. The last resistance and the last victory, very, very, very big and very clear victory against the coup d'etat chain in Turkey. And in Turkey, you know, in 15 July, the people who tried to make a coup d'etat in Turkey, they failed because of the resistance of their people. And the people showed very, very, very heroic character and very heroic show to the against the coup d'etat, and we had about 250 martyrs, shaheed, inshallah, and more than 1,000 people were injured during this one night. But after all, we can see that we are proud of our democracy, because we became very, very proud of our nation, because it deserved. It is one of the few nations or few people who deserve democracy. They deserve the democracy because they defended their own government. That is very exceptional movement, social movement. Actually, we are usual in witnessing social movement are taking place to defend, to uprise against their government. But in the Turkish case, the Turkish people went to the streets to defend their government. That is really exceptional, and that means that there is a convergence between the nation and their government, between the nation and the state, and that is what is absent in our Muslim societies after colonialism. Even in the colonial age or after colonialism, in the post-colonial age, which came in the post-colonial age, there happened to be some dictatorships which played a role worse than the direct colonialism. They played as a sort of proxy of colonialism, not savor from colonialism, but a proxy of colonialism, and they protected the rights of the colonials after they left their countries. And there is always a difference, separation between the nations and their state, the people and their state. The state are not represent their people. That is our tragedy in our countries, in our world, in the Muslim world. The states are not being represented by their the people are not represented by their states. The states are something different. They are in other worlds, and they are imposing some dictatorship, some ideologies, another identity different than the cultural and historical identity of their people. That difference and then that distance between the states and their society means that the states are the agents of colonialism in our countries. So these revolutions, especially the July revolution in Bangladesh, represent, look at this, it is the same. Even though Mahmoud Rahmani in the morning said, yes, the revolution of Bangladesh is unique in many aspects. It's really unique. It is unique, but believe me, all the revolutions which is taking place, all the idea behind the revolutions in our societies is the same. They try to get independence from colonialism. That is why in Bangladesh, the July revolution doesn't represent appraisal against the Hasina only, or the Hasina dictatorship only, because just on the contrary, it also represents appraisal against colonialism of India, for example. The colonialism, direct colonialism or indirect colonialism of India, and all the coup d'etats, all these states who are far away from representing their own societies are representing the interest of some imperial powers. And that is why behind all these coup d'etats there are some foreign interferers, there are some foreign actors, some other colonial regimes. And so when we see in Turkey also was the same, and this will to uprise against the coup d'etat, all the coup d'etats in Turkey which took place since the beginning were always interlinked with some countries, in either United Kingdom or sometimes United States. Recently, it was related with the United States, with NATO, and NATO was directly make an adjustment of the regime of Turkey by way of coup d'etat. So the coup d'etat attempts, or the regime or the dictatorship in our countries never represent their own society. So revolutions against these dictators is also a seek for not only for democracy, but a seek for independence, a seek for dignity, a seek for bread, and a fight against corruption, which was called by Brother Saidul Islam as kleptomany. Just to mention, I don't know whether I have enough time, sufficient time, but I want to mention last interview with an U.S. ambassador or special envoy to Syria. He said he mentioned very interesting point about Israel, and he said Israel doesn't want any strong country in the region. Look at this security conception of Israel, which was put by United States and by Europe in the middle, or in the heart of Middle East, in the heart of the Muslim world, it puts by force. And now we usually hear something about Israel's right to defend itself. Israel has a right to survive. Israel has the right to defend itself. But this right, where this right is coming from? And if they have that right, but that right is on the expense of removing some people from their own land. For example, what we are witnessing in Gaza now is very, very tragic. Of course, people are being forced to die by starvation, and now the conception of the security conception of Israel is really very, very interesting, and it explains how democracy cannot or couldn't develop in our countries. And why it couldn't? Because the reason, we heard many things. We are all academics, we are all intellectuals. We joined several conferences which under the titles of us asking about the compatibility of democracy and Islam. Or Islam, does Islam and democracy are compatible? Are Islam and democracy compatible? Or Islamic values or Islamic principles are not compatible with democracy, so Muslim world cannot develop democratically, etc. And we heard many things about this. And we, as the Muslim intellectuals, usually find ourselves in a position of apologism and defending ourselves. No, Islam is very good. It's not as you think. It's very compatible with democracy. We think that they are very sincere, and really they want to ask about the compatibility of Islam and democracy. You know, Karl Popper, he has written a book about open society and its enemies. It's a very interesting book. And I ask about, I turned this title into the democratic society and its enemies in the Muslim world. Who are the enemies of democracy in the Muslim world? Is it Islam? No. Islam and democracy can be compatible. Islam can be compatible with monarchy, can be compatible with democracy also. That doesn't mean that the message or the mission of Muslims, the message of the Islamists is to bring democracy. No. But Islam and democracy has any elements that not to be compatible. But when we see any possibility of developing democracy in the Muslim world, we see behind that the coup d'etats or the counter-revolutions whose behind are some Western democracies. Western democracies are the enemies of the democracy in the Muslim world. And that is how we see not only Western democracies. Western democracies are the enemies of the development who hinder the development of democracy in our world. But they do it for many reasons. Of course, they don't want a successful Muslim democracy working. That we should be aware of this, and we should be careful, and we should be. Unfortunately, there are some monarchies in the Arab world who are not content with any possibility of democracy. But what the Tom Barak, I mean the special envoy of United States of Syria, was saying that Israel doesn't want any strong country in the region. Israel doesn't want any democratic Muslim country in the region, because democratic Muslim country means a sort of threat to Israel. And what is the evidence of this is when 1 year under the rule of Mohamed Morsi, Egypt was a potential threat to Israel. So they revolted it, and they made the coup d'etat, counter-revolution there, and they revolted it. And they try. Turkey is against Israel. It is against Israel because it is not content with with the occupation, and it is against occupation. It is against these massacres or genocide, and it is declaring everywhere, because Turkey is democracy. It is genuine democracy. The genuine democracy cannot be content with the very existence of Israel. So Israel tried to do its best to prevent the development of any democracy in our region. So they try to attack Syria. Syria is a new revolution, and I would like to thank really Bangladesh July revolution, because it triggered the revolutions, and it made almost 2024 like a new spring in the Muslim democracy, not to say Arab Spring, but to say the Muslim Spring. And when it started here, opened the way for democracy here, and we saw just at the end of the year, in 2 places there happened to be new, really victorious step took forward in Muslim world. One in Syria, it was really very, very strong and open and clear revolution. It was a sort of concours rather than revolution, and it, what Assad was representing the interest of Israel. He was not representing the interest of his own people at all. He was the reason for killing of at least 1 million people and the location of displacement of at least 12 million people from there. And we saw coming to Syria and also Gaza. And when in Gaza in December 15. In 2024, it was the last victory, which Hamas, with very simple equipment, forced the superpower Israel plus America to ceasefire and made an agreement with it. Even though it didn't last, but it was very, very clear victory. And also I want to mention one more point, and at the end. We in Turkey, we always welcome the development of democracies in all regions, in Muslim countries, especially in everywhere. And we are the target, we are destination for migration or for some asylums from despotic countries. We are, for example, we hosted from Syria about 5 million people. 5 million refugees came to Turkey, and Turkey, alhamdulillah, hosted them and tried to give them shelter, and it considered them with the naming and with the statement of Recep Tayyip Erdogan about them was as muhajir, not refugee. He said they are muhajir, and inshallah we will be an ansar. But I want to mention about any proliferation of the resource countries as refugees in Turkey or as muhajir in Turkey. We've received, for example, from Egypt, from Iraq, from Libya, from Yemen, from Syria, from Sudan, from Tunis. All these countries were despotic countries, but alhamdulillah we didn't receive from Pakistan, from Malaysia, from Indonesia, those countries where democracy is working in this or another way, and there are no any Islamophobic developments or feelings there. I say this all, and I would like to thank you again for listening, and I am really very happy and congratulate our brothers for their very big victorious revolution. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.